Hey everyone, welcome to our latest Trade to Black live stream podcast. I'm your host, Shad Dales. Hope you all had a great week. What a week. Another great week for the overall industry, cannabis and psychedelics. MAPS with their big announcement yesterday. We're going to focus primarily on both verticals here today and take a quick recap. Before we get started, all views of the Trade to Black podcast and the guests on this podcast are purely opinion. You should not treat any opinions expressed by us as investment advice. The views on this podcast are solely intended to be informational and are not investment advice. Let's welcome in the gents. Anthony Verrill, hope you had a good day.
Yeah, it was a good day. It was an honest day. The market was moving. There was a lot of action. It's glad we get to recap it.
Ben, good to see you. Hope you also had a good day.
Yeah, I had a very good day, and what a week. It's been a great couple weeks, actually.
How do you put it into words? If you had to put it into words the last couple of weeks, or what would you say?
I would say personally, euphoria. I think, a lot of positive sentiment is obviously coming to the industry and people are excited. And we haven't seen that in probably since the Senate the Senate runoff vote where the Democrats got the Senate after Joe Biden got elected in that runoff in Georgia, and people thought reform was going to come fast and furious. We haven't been that excited. We're at that place right now.
Yeah, I think we are. That's for sure. We'll begin with the story NBC News posted last night about the Republicans softening their stance on federal reform. Anthony, you text that over to me, but we obviously saw a lot of that momentum when the market first opened up here this morning, a lot of excitement. But as the day progressed, we're starting to see some, I think, exhaustion amongst investors. Why not? Like, it's not necessarily bad, but clearly this is just another positive step in the right direction based off of that story.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just investor fatigue. I mean, you could look at the volumes and they'll tell you that right away. I don't think it's anything for concern. We got the firm date. Actually, there was a report after the bell that the 27th markup is firm, and I mean that's what we're looking forward to next. But I mean, like we've said, I mean the Republican headline last night was great, but at the same time, let's get ink on paper.
Yep, for sure. Alex Stetson, good evening, gents. Good to see you. Lucifer back on again. Hello, good to see you. We look at some of the performance today. Hydrofarm Holdings Group. We don't really talk about them. They were up over 20%. Aurora Cannabis continues to draw attention, up almost 15%. Some of the bigger players, both Verano and Trulieve, up 6% and 5% respectively. And another company that is grabbing more and more attention amongst investors, a company that has 33 dispensaries within the state of Florida, is Cansortium, up 20% on 850,000 shares in volume. Why, obviously on paper, this looks like a company that's in a very desirable market, to say the least. But I don't know a lot about the company, but as far as it being hit hard in the past, why is this suddenly garnering attention?
Yeah, I mean, it's gotten killed. It's lagged the rally. I mean, full disclosure, I picked up a position in it today. So I do own the stock. It is they're one of the top 6 players in Florida. They've got over 30 doors in the state. Company was trading at around a $30 million market cap. I mean, I noticed that. And I mean, that was evidence enough. Looked into the filings, looked into the financials. They've also got a license, one of 3 in Texas. And I mean, it just looks like a severely undervalued play where GTI also owns pieces of their debt. And I mean, if you do believe that GTI long-term would be an entrant into the state of Florida by acquisition, not by organic growth, then I mean, GTI technically has somewhat of a call option and leverage to this asset.
Yeah, which brings up your next question. Lucifer writes, didn't Green Thumb look into buying their debt? Which, there you go, right?
Yeah, it's buried within the filings. It's hard to find. Someone had posted on Twitter actually today.
Yeah. We also saw Ben Jushi moved a little bit up. Smoky Mountain STR, thanks for reaching out. But yeah, we were going to do that, up 10.96%. So some movement, obviously, with Jushi.
Yeah, some movements, good movements across the board. Gap up, as you noted earlier. And I think at least this is what I've been messaging out on Twitter, that because the rally is largely retail right now, institutions are sidelined until the reform actually passes, until Schedule 3, like ink on paper, as Anthony mentioned, we're going to be subject to this, subject to moves on the downside during gaps. And I think that's what you saw today. Volume is still pretty high, but after 100% move, and we noted that on the open, over 100% on open over the past 2.5 weeks, we saw people come in and start profit taking. So it's going to be really nice to get the institutions in once reform happens, assuming it happens, and then there's going to be more of a floor on some of these price actions that we're seeing. But individual names like Jushi and all that,
Yeah.
up a little bit of sell off, but most of them still finish in the green, which is a good thing to see.
Yeah.
I mean, the good thing here is MSOS closed above 9. If we would have closed below 9, I would have
been concerned,
been a little bit not concerned, but just it wouldn't have been. I mean, I still think today overall was a win.
Yeah.
It was, but I'm gonna reiterate to everybody: we got to keep in mind that this is a retail-driven rally, small fund, retail-driven, ETF-driven, in which they have, MSOs has 11 or 12 million in the till right now. Inflows have been sort of drying up, so just keep that in mind. That if you have that FOMO action and you want to just go all in and you're just going to pay whatever gap, keep in mind that this is still retail driven right now. Excellent price action. I love it. We're bulls. I've been a bull above 725 all day, every day. But keep in mind that we're subject to this if you want to get the best price point that you can.
Well, we had a good conversation yesterday, Anthony. Ben, you saw it too, with Matt Hawkins, founder of Entourage Effect Capital. He is an institutional investor, to say the least. I think everybody knows this, but yeah, there's a lot of conversations that obviously institutions are having right now. Some are obviously starting to sprinkle in, but biggest takeaway is that he is a firm believer 100% that the greatest days for this industry still lie ahead. It's just a matter of when they enter in. I asked the question, do we have to have something signed off before they enter in? And he said no, that we will start to see as we have now entered into a bull market. But that's telling as we obviously step into from summer into the fall.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a great conversation. I mean, Matt's got a ton of leverage to the space. I mean, they're on their 3rd fund. And I mean, they're one of the paramount investors that, I mean, I met him back in 2016, I think at ArcView, when I first started getting into the space as well.
Yeah,
it's a good sign. I mean, he's got institutional relationships. I mean, they're more of one of the more institutional funds. And I mean, Matt said it himself. I mean, you want to just talk about the amount of capital that's been deployed in the sector. He's one of the largest funds in the space, and they're at about $300 million. That's not big compared to other industries. That's quite small. I mean, if you get into the depth, the breadth and depth of it, as far as the capital that's also come in from a debt standpoint, I mean, that's also much larger funds out there like Chicago Atlantic and the likes of them. But I mean, the amount of venture money that's out there right now, I mean, it's pales in comparison to other sectors. And it's only going to get bigger as the sector keeps maturing.
Now, just imagine what happens when institution money really comes in and they're allowed to also get the underlying. And that's what's going to help MSOs even more, because really the only thing that you can get from a US perspective is MSOs. That's really your only option. So just imagine, when they uplist and that comes, and then all of a sudden institutions can start buying True Leaf, Cresco, Cureleaf. They can buy the underlying. That's also going to put torque into MSOs. So instead of just getting ETF and small fund money, retail money mostly, now you have big institutions purchasing the underlying, and that's going to torque MSOs even more. It's going to feed on itself. So that's what lies ahead if politicians don't fuck it up, essentially.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's a big I
Benny
mean,
coming in hot. Benny coming in hot.
I mean, it's true though. I mean, there's a lot of chefs in the kitchen right now. Across the board.
Well, he's considered probably one of the most sophisticated investors in the space right now, managing 300 million. But he outlined to us they want to grow fast up to $1 billion. But that gives you an idea as to where we could go if we get some sort of reform, right?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. And I mean, one thing that I've been thinking about a lot lately is where this sector actually starts to trade from a multiple standpoint. I mean, because that's where you start to be able to justify the share prices of the stocks right now. Yeah. And I mean, a lot of these, there's no established multiple that these are trading at. I mean, you look at something like NVIDIA, granted, these are not anywhere near that. I'm just using as an example. I think it's trading at 29 times right now. Yeah. And I mean, once we start to establish that, I mean, you can really start to sink your teeth into some of these names and as to where they're probably going to go. On a go forward basis.
Want to say hello to
just start with CPG and consumer packaged goods space. Start with that. And I think even cannabis right now, it's like, or at least it was pretty recently, like before the run, it was like 2/3 below just standard
Correct.
CPG, right? So if you just start there, if you assume that growth is going to moderate to mid single digits to high single digits growth over time, and you assume that margin profile will go down, compress like it will into like the mid 30s, and it's going to be like a regular CPG company and beverages and whatever, so like a Molson or any of the other beverage space, you're still looking at probably a 3x from here, even if it normalized to that sort of valuation. So that would be a good starting point. If it ever went to like tech valuations, like Anthony mentioned, I know you weren't saying that, but I mean, maybe even gets premium because it's a high growth industry, right? I mean,
I'd like to settle in somewhere in between there. So somewhere in between there for at least the near future, for where this really starts to take off, and then settle in and mature from there. But I mean, yes, the people that are positioned right now would greatly benefit from that multiple expansion, especially once you get institutions involved in the major exchanges and you actually start to really get price discovery into these names. Things can get very interesting.
Yeah. Want to say hello to all of our viewers who are just logging on right now on both LinkedIn and YouTube. We're talking about the market recap of the week, both in psychedelics and cannabis. Is recovering cannabis right now. Really Reels writes, no hat, Anthony. That wild clothes must have had him fingers through the hair. Look at that hair.
Yeah, we gotta start moderating these questions a little bit.
Anyway, there is what was some of the feedback?
I saw people were talking about Dan the Chart Man and Toby, but I didn't really pay attention to what was going on with them. Did you see that, Ben?
I did not see. Didn't they do a Spaces? I know Jesse and
they were saying that they were passive aggressively jousting on Twitter today, which I don't know how, because Dan's probably coming to an argument with facts. He's pretty sound when he's talking about all this stuff on Twitter.
I love Chartman Dan. He gives such a good perspective on the price action. I know he sort of jilts some people because he's buying and selling all the time instead of the buy and holders. And the market is more long term, but he just wants to make money, and I don't blame him, man. I used to be a trader myself. He doesn't care. He doesn't have enough.
I'm not going to lie.
Hold on. Run it back. What was some of the discussion that was being spoke about?
I don't know. I'm just responding to this. I don't know what the actual conversation was, but I'm saying, like, I don't know how you can really argue with Dan. And I mean, I think people that come after him for playing both sides, I mean, are crazy. I'm not going to lie. If the regulatory stuff falls apart or SAFE falls apart and it looks like the bottom's going to fall out, I'm probably going to go short MSOs and play the market. I mean, that's what you should do. It's not buy and just hold and pray. Like, Dan's smart, Dan's agile, Dan's in it to make money. He's a market participant.
Yep. We brought up a couple company names, Consortium, as I said, some of the smaller companies that are starting to get attention. We look at some of these other smaller companies who are grabbing attention. Who are some of the companies that come to mind?
Ben, you want to take that one?
Some of the companies that come to mind, I would
I had a pretty good thread on Ascend. Yeah.
Ascend?
I had a pretty good thread on Ascend today. I mean, they're in good markets. They're in markets that are poised to grow. They've still got a ton of debt. I think it was $302 million total on the balance sheet, but they've got new management. I mean, it looks interesting. I'm looking for like value plays, like something that looks like it's got a $600-700 million annualized run rate. Meanwhile, it's trading at a $200 million market cap, $250 million market cap. Like, to me, that's where I start, and then just start digging in from there, because fundamentally that's dislocated with where it should be trading at.
Yeah. What can you guys anticipate going into next week? Just a lot of like up and down week, you think?
I think we're
just going to go on headline risk. Yeah. It's going to be headline risk. The market's going to trade off that for foreseeable future. And, we get good safe banking note or markup vote, for example, it's going to go up. And if there's any sort of push, fault setbacks, there's any sort of delays, and it could go down. I mean, that's the way it is. Again, it's mainly a retail and small fund driven market. So it's going to be subject to the whims of news.
Yeah. Question. Do you guys have any positions in Tilray? Thoughts on Tilray? I do not have a position. Muhammad writes.
No, I do not have a position in Tilray. You can see my opinion throughout our catalog on Tilray. I think what Irwin's doing is genius. I think that it's the future of the cannabis industry. That is in no way, shape, or form saying go buy their stock. Develop your own opinion and do your own research. But the breweries that he's purchased, the distribution companies that he's purchased, the alcohol-focused business model that he's deploying in the United States, people want to call him a clown and say that it's stupid in the short term. I don't know about that. I would bet on it in the long term. 100%. I think he's barking up the right tree.
Yep. Another question brought up from Braindead writes, how do you feel? And I think that's Ianthus is what he meant to say.
Again, not financial advice. 6.5 billion shares doesn't really do it for me. They've got 4. I mean, I looked into Ianthus 2 days ago. They have, I think, 3 operating dispensaries in New York, which is attractive. But you've got Gotham Green that took over a lot of their debt and I think their equity in hostile transactions throughout. The cap structure is completely fucked. There's other opportunities in the space to get leverage to New York.
Ben, question for you. This is from Lucifer. Somewhat specific regarding TFSA investments in MJ stocks. If the stock at a point starts spitting out dividends, do you think the Canadian government will shut down those tax sheltered accounts? Tough question.
I don't know. That's pure speculation. I don't have any dividend paying stocks in my TFSA, and I actually do not know the answer specifically to that question. But as far as I know, anything that goes in the TFSA is tax free, even dividends. And I don't anticipate that they shut down unless they want another revenue stream. I haven't heard anything about that.
Gotta love your tax-free savings account in Canada. Another question, Matt Carnes writes, do you guys know anything about the Garland memo? Anything here about timing on that? You guys familiar with that?
I have not heard anything about that, except for chances are by end of year. I don't think there's anything concrete around that yet. I mean, Matt's pretty connected. If Matt doesn't know or Matt hasn't heard about the timing, I'm assuming it's in limbo for the time being.
Well, Hamid writes another question. Oh, that's the last one. So if you had to own one, which one would you choose, Tilray or Canopy? Thanks for answering.
Unfortunately, we can't really answer that or make that decision for you. I think they're both.
Contact the broker, buddy.
Yeah, those are both cannabis companies. I mean, you could do your own due diligence and figure that out on your own. They're both fundamentally very different businesses.
Yeah. Well, all I can say is that Tilray's doing a heck of a job, and I'll just leave it at that. Anything else we want to touch on cannabis? Got a lot of questions coming in here today, which is great.
Yeah, we got the Spaces next week is locked down with Don Murphy.
Yep.
That we announced today on Thursday night, which will be good. So we'll get Monday through Wednesday's news. Hopefully there's something. But I mean, it's pretty big that 27th is concrete as far as the date for the markup. So that's going to be a big day. It's going to be a lot of hopefully momentum and buzz leading into that. Hopefully we don't start to get antsy.
Yeah. For those that aren't familiar with who Don Murphy is, a lot of people do in this industry, but he's the biggest lobbyist in this space in Washington. Done a heck of a job right now, and we've had him on a few times before. But if you were to quick tee things up and like have a little teaser, what are some of the questions that you think that will be important to cover off next week in that Spaces?
I think who are the Republicans that are topping off coming on to potentially sign in the bill, and just general sentiment. I mean, there's not really a lot that we don't know right now.
Yeah.
I mean, we know when the markup's going to happen. We know that I don't want to say it's a layup, but I don't think there's going to be a lot of friction this time around. I mean, I don't think there's going to be a lot of back and forth. I think they know what's coming. I think they're going to pass this thing. I mean, I really think that they want this political win on both sides. Like they want to beat Biden to the punch. Like we're now talking about political theater and the will of leadership. Like they're not fighting over cannabis, but cannabis is an issue right now. I mean, Kamala Harris was going to colleges, I'm pretty sure, this week to do speaking engagements. And she was bringing up like Joe Biden's cannabis policy. They started to, what's the word? They're starting to get people out of prison for cannabis offenses. Expunge. They're starting to expunge and get people out of jail. So, I mean, Biden is starting to come through on his promises, which doesn't really surprise me as they're going to need young people to come out and vote. I still don't think this is going to move the needle for him, but if they want to pull these levers and do the work for us, go right ahead.
You
I
agree
don't
with
think the markup vote is any real news. It's going to be it's going to
No.
make headlines. You're going to see people all over Twitter, extol it and so forth. But yeah, this is expected. So to me, this is not real news. At very minimum, it's going to go through markup, and this is very projected forward. So I'm looking to see what happens more in the Senate, and all indications are it's looking pretty good there. And then what happens in the House thereafter. But things are looking pretty good. But the markup vote, I think it's a slam dunk.
Yep. Ben, we saw, as I said, we said earlier, like we're seeing a little bit of exhaustion from a technical standpoint when looking at charts. You mind maybe outlining a few things that you noticed going into the close today?
Yeah, to be honest, I'm not really seeing too much exhaustion. The market, I mean, there's 16 million shares in volume. So I see this personally as a gap, as a reason to sell. Again, we had over 100% run when MSOs was 960 pre-market. We touched over 10, which is a psychological mark that people look at, and it was a pretty healthy gap. We're looking at 10% gap or thereabouts. So I think it was just an opportunity to sell. And again, because we are mostly retail, small fund base, maybe a sprinkle of institutions, but largely not real institution money is here, then this is going to be prone for that. And some people took the opportunity to lock in some gains, as they probably should. I mean, you see it all over the market, and today it kind of happened in this sector. But is the price action still looking good? Is technically still everything's still sound? I would have to say yes, absolutely. This is just normal profit taking sort of action, and the volume was still robust. So I think it looks pretty good going into next week with all those headlines coming over the next few weeks.
Yeah, actually, we missed Tilt Holdings. Tilt Holdings was up 34% today.
Wow.
Was it up
I would have
34?
touched. It is. It was up 34%, 630,000 shares.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Rightfully.
I mean, this is a pretty good question by Yoshi about impairments and MSOs going to be looking at when interstate commerce happens. I mean, interstate commerce is probably pretty far ways away. And I mean, at the same time, these states are going to insulate the businesses that they've built. I mean, they're going to want to protect the jobs. They're going to want to protect the tax revenue. There'll be interstate commerce to, I don't know when interstate commerce is going to come, but I don't have it coming anytime soon.
Yeah. Brady Cobb, I mentioned
future.
this week in our podcast. He says it's coming. And I know there was a few things that you wanted to maybe contest him with on what his views were. Maybe you want to touch on that a little bit. Do you remember?
You mean on interstate commerce?
Yeah.
I mean, I just don't. I just think it's a ways away. I mean, Brady and I agreed both that the states will probably insulate, but there'll be interstate commerce to a degree.
Yeah.
And we said on last podcast, we talked about Glasshouse, and I'm like, I think, and again, I don't own it. I've never owned it. I consider this an interstate commerce play, but I can envision owning this at one point once we get closer to legalization. I think that is something that people want to look at, maybe put that on their portfolio watch and put that on the back burner in terms of, what to look at. But one day that is going to be a very valuable company.
Oh, I would buy, if there was a conversation that started tomorrow about how interstate commerce is coming or interstate commerce is going to be part of any of this, I would go buy Glasshouse. And that's not a recommendation to buy Glasshouse, but I would instantly pick it up.
Gents, check this out. Breaking news. They just confirmed safe banking vote date is official on September 27th. News from Marijuana Moment. Interesting.
Yeah, that's what you mentioned earlier, right, Anthony?
I've said that about 4 times already.
Yeah, I hear you. We're ahead of the game.
Yeah.
But thanks anyway, Mohammed.
Yeah, September 27th markup. It is in stone. Location and time is TBD, but all eyes will be on that when it goes down.
I learned something interesting today. Website called fintel.io. You can log on to this website. It's public knowledge. But for example, if you Google, for example, Canopy Growth's largest shareholders or Tilray or whatever, you'll find the link on Google and it takes you to a site. And what it outlines is every single institution that owns the stock. And needless to say, obviously, some of the players like Canopy and Tilray have a couple hundred institutions owning, but companies like Curaleaf, there's only literally a handful. But to your point, Ben and both Anthony, that list is going to grow and grow substantially if we start to get movement here.
Oh yeah, I mean it'll grow. It'll majorly grow.
Yeah.
I mean, Canopy and Tilray are beneficiaries of being on the NYSE and the NASDAQ.
Yeah.
I mean, they get inclusion. Funds can buy them. Institutions can buy them. Wealth management clients can buy them. I mean, no, you can't call your broker right now and say, if you're a if you're a Chase private client or a Goldman client, you can't call your wealth manager and be like, hey, I want you to allocate 5% of my portfolio to cannabis stocks. They can't.
They can't, huh?
No.
That's frustrating.
No. So 280, the repealing of 280 and safe banking getting through alleviates that.
You can't allocate more than 5% of your portfolio towards cannabis.
Oh, no, you can't buy them, period.
You can't buy them, period.
No.
Wow.
No.
Did not know that.
You can't buy them in the US with OTC, you mean?
No, I mean, okay, so you can't, yes, your E-Trade, TD Ameritrade, et cetera, but the other wealth management, the banks, and the financial professionals, they can't hold them.
Gotcha.
Especially the OTC stuff.
Yeah.
Somebody
writes, does that apply to SNDL?
SNDL should be able to be held. They trade on the NASDAQ, I'm pretty sure.
Just don't call it Sundial.
Yeah.
Don't call
SNDL.
Sundial.
Gotta remember.
I don't know why Sundial sounds so much better than SNDL.
Yeah. Again, just to let our viewers know that follow that stock very closely, we have reached out to the team. They've indicated to us most likely end of the month, early October, that Zach is going to take time to come on the podcast. Another good question, Yoshi. Florida recreational, as Brady noted, yes, 5 of 7 justices were DeSantis appointed, but 3 of those DeSantis appointees already voted on the single subject aspect of the previous initiative.
I mean, that's a really good point. That's a really good point that I didn't think about when Brady brought that up, which is big because the single subject isn't really going to apply this time around because it took out home grow, which was the sticking point.
Yeah. Our good friend, CEO over at New Lake, Anthony Coniglio, writes, most wealth managers and prime brokers will not hold OTC stocks in the marijuana sector. And if somebody knows what they're talking about, it's Anthony.
Yeah, that's exactly why, the uplisting thing is huge. It's going to be huge for MSOs. It's going to be huge for the market. It's going to add torque to everything. That is going to be big when exchange listed becomes reality for the underlying. And it's not just Dan Aaron's purchasing swaps in the fund. It's going to be a big deal.
Yeah. I mean, think about it this way. I mean, GTI, as far as I'm concerned, I mean, I'm not calling favorites, but it's probably the strongest name in the sector.
Yep.
It's what would probably garner the most institutional ownership. It traded 700,000 shares today.
Think about that.
700,000. And you know what? You're absolutely right about the institutional because it already has like big name backers like Leon Cooperman. He's a billionaire. For people who don't know him, he's I don't know if he's a hedge fund, but he's an investor. He's a $1 billion wealth.
Family offices, and the like will start buying these names when they can.
Yeah. Back in the day, there was around between the 4 or 5 large MSOs, they were trading around 30 million in volume daily on the CSE. And if and when they get uplisted onto the major exchanges, they're predicting anywhere between 4 and 500 million daily, which is a big difference. That's to say the least. Robert writes, not much about Curaleaf, clear winner. Yes, we talk a lot about Curaleaf, and yes, we do like them a lot.
Yeah, it's got a premium to the market too, right? So the reason why maybe we don't talk about it in terms of liking it the best only is because they have the premium. Now, you could argue that they should have the highest premium. They're the only ones in Europe. Europe's starting to unlock. Germany's going unlocking their program soon, but it's the GOAT in the sector right now. But there are other companies too that are kind of on their level that are trading at half the valuation. So it depends what you like. Yeah. Either you want to take the leader. Some people like taking the leaders and taking that valuation premium, and some people look for value. It depends what you're into.
Question: can GTI trade on the S&P 500?
Well, I mean, sure, anything can happen once it.
Yeah.
I mean, no, it's not gonna. I mean, that'd be impressive, but they'd have to meet the requirements for the S&P 500.
What's the benchmark market cap for S&P 500? Is it?
I couldn't tell you.
12 billion.
It's high.
I believe from memory, it's something like 12 billion. I would think that the revenue profile is pretty close to being there at like 1 billion, annual run rate. And that's just now. If reform unlocks, maybe you're looking at I don't know, 1.5 billion in a year or two. It could very well qualify. Yeah, at some point.
Yeah. Any other notable names that we wanted to look at as far as performance today? As I said, Verana was up. Canopy Growth, what was their volume for the day? They were up just over.
Canopy traded 120,000 or 120 million shares, closed at $1.35. I think it traded up as high as like $1.52, around like 10:30 today, and then it was just floating around all day.
Roar Cannabis.
I expected it to be higher. I expected it to run hotter today when it popped up. It opened up 16%.
Yeah, it was hot. That's
you're speaking about Aurora Cannabis, Shad, and that's something I actually brought up a poll because I got thinking about this. I think it's too early for any such talk or speculation, but when you think about it, Curaleaf is the only U.S. MSO that really has material operations overseas and in Europe. Like no other MSO is really in play there. So does Aurora, if reform goes through and they start to get cashed up through, deals, private placements and so forth and operating revenue, a few quarters down the road, do people look at Aurora Cannabis to sort of expedite their growth into Europe? It just, I don't know, again, way too early for that type of speculation, but Aurora has some pretty good, decent assets over there.
They're going to have
Tilray does too, though.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, Tilray's got a serious distribution network already.
But to remain existent, like they can't obviously step into the U.S. It's like next stop is obviously Europe, right? Canada's too small, right? So, Mohammed writes, Canopy Booze, quick on news. Tilray has been running slow lately compared to all their MJ stocks, which is weird. Yeah, but to Jesse's point last week in that Spaces, that tier 1, 2, and 3 model. I think a lot of the companies, as we've said before, that have been shorted the hardest are obviously getting short-term growth right now. But like I said, if and when we get some sort of change with reform, I think the big dog.
We've got earnings season coming up in 5 weeks.
Is it 5?
I think cannabis companies will start reporting about the second week of October.
Second week.
Third week of October.
Is it?
Is it? I saw someone announce today that they were reporting 10:15.
Hey guys, what was actually out this morning? And I want to bring this up. High Tide had their latest earnings. Did you guys get a chance to see that?
No.
Should bring that up.
Yeah, I did get a little. I did have a chance to see that. Pretty good numbers. Let me just go through my notes here. We're looking at.
I like High Tide.
Great company.
Free cash flow of 4.1 million per the quarter. Same store sales increased 19% year over year, 8% sequentially. Number one non-franchised retailer in Canada. So a very good growth profile here, and they're very close to, they did generate positive cash flow. So they're turning the corner there, and yeah, I mean, if there's one retailer that I would invest in Canada, it would be High Tide because they do have they do have a lot of cost control. And they're turning the boat around on free cash flow. So
156 locations in Canada now. A lot of them out west, but they're starting to get aggressive more in Ontario. Are they not, Ben?
Yeah, I think so. Yep, they're pretty popular here. They have some brands. Their stores, Cabana Club, are very popular. They also have like a very good online retailer. They have like 1.4 million users online. Sorry, 1.1 million Cabana Club members. So they're very popular online as well. So they have that platform that not a lot of people have in terms of sheer size and volume.
Robert, did I say High Times? I meant High Tide. Senior moment.
Yeah, not High Times.
Apologies if I did say that.
Ben is correct. Earnings pretty much start 10:28.
Okay.
10:28. Yeah, and you'll have like
the majors.
The majors will be like first week in November, right? Into like mid-November. And then you'll have like a couple smaller ones to start the month.
Yeah. MariMed's first off the bat, 11.8.
High Tide remains the highest revenue generating cannabis company reporting in Canadian dollars, and it's the fastest growing retailer in the Americas, as reported by the Financial Times. So lots to like about this company.
Yeah. See, David, actually, this makes sense that he says he's in the UK and the only one being publicly advertised is Curaleaf. See, that's correct. I mean, I think they will be a big beneficiary, but at the same time, I mean, the premium's pretty high right now compared to their peers.
Yeah. I don't know how long it's going to take, like for if Aurora Cannabis will ever be in play from an MSO and want to scoop up some assets there. But at what point, does another big MSO that's non-Curaleaf get into the European market? It is definitely coming. That expansion is going to come at some point, I would
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
I don't
Probably
know.
after reform, but
I don't know. I'm not knowing the companies and the CEOs the way that we do. Boris, to me, fits the profile for someone that would want to go after Europe, that would want to leverage his connections in Europe. I don't know if I could see any of the other tier one MSOs branching out outside of the US.
It's a good point. That's a really good point.
So?
I don't know, not at face value. I couldn't see Kim, Ben, George,
Jason
any of the other
Wild.
major, Jason Wild, any of the other major cannabis CEOs. I mean, they're head down and they've got a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
In the United States.
The onboarding of that would be a lot of work.
Boris to me fits that profile. He's done it. He's invested abroad. He's made money abroad. He's that guy. I just can't see the other ones doing it.
Yeah. Mohammed writes, since HHS recommended it to be moved to Schedule 3, can Biden override, excuse me, can Biden override DEA and deschedule? No, I know that's maybe impossible, but can it happen? It cannot.
I'm pretty sure he can issue some sort of executive order and do whatever he wants. He's not going to.
No.
I mean, those are his appointees at the DEA and HHS, so they're doing his bidding. I mean,
ACB buyout or merger, in my opinion. Kevin Lee writes,
I can see it personally. I really can. Will it happen? I'm not sure. Will it happen anytime soon? Probably not. Again, most of these companies traditionally like to get accretive value on their acquisitions. That's why we see a lot of smaller ones. Not exclusively, but Aurora's turning the corner though, and they're expecting positive cash flow. At least that's what they're projecting. We've heard that before. They haven't come through, so take that with a grain of salt right now. But they do appear to be turning the corner. It's been a long process because they've been shutting down non-performing assets, and they've gotten a lot leaner and smaller.
Yeah,
and they do have a good medical program, and they are in Germany. So, you never know.
It was high times, I said, and really Reels writes, high times later. Indeed, it's Friday. What a week it's been, huh?
I'm looking forward to the weekend.
Yeah, that's for sure. I'm not sure, like our audience out there, how much you follow the psychedelic space. I know we touched on this news yesterday with MAPS, which is pretty much groundbreaking news, which was incredible as far as the MDMA readouts. But we're 36 hours after this announcement. How do you guys think the market has reacted to this news? Still too early to tell, but Ben, I see a smirk on your face, so fire away.
Well, because you asked the question, how do I think the market's reacted? Now, it's sort of bifurcated. Like people who follow the industry, professionals, academics, they all love the news. How could you not? 71% straight up remission rate of PTSD, which was better than the 67%. That's 2/3 of people who are cured, right?
Think
and not
about
taking an SSRI for the rest of their lives. I mean, this is huge. 85% experience either remission or partial remission of symptoms. So the data was incredible. Even the safety data, 7 adverse events, none serious versus 3 in placebo. I mean, it looks good. Everything looks set up. Now, if you look at the capital markets, they didn't really do much. I mean, Numinous moved 3 cents. Today it was up another cent.
Yeah.
Volume was 2 million, but really the reaction wasn't that good. But as we explained, at least internally, we didn't expect the volume to be good on this news, only because a lot of people expected this to be good. Because they had that readout in January, and this is sort of follow-on results, and those results were even a little bit better. So I think the
Ben,
news is,
I know you know this space. I know you know this space very well, and I thought about this earlier when we were shooting the episode with Cody. So reading through the MAP stuff, how does a placebo matter in a psychedelic trial? I mean, you take acid, you're taking acid.
Yeah.
Like you take MDMA, like what you've taken. Like I know for a fact that if it was a placebo, I would know that I was on the placebo in that trial. So I mean, have you ever asked any of these questions to any of these execs, like how do they use a placebo and like what's the point of like the validation if like you really know that you're in a current altered state if you're using one of these substances?
That's a good question because
Yeah.
I don't know the answer specifically, but I know some trials, that's one of the big challenges of certain trials when you're taking
Yeah.
drugs that are known to have a profound effect, like you mentioned with MDMA. I mean, how could you not know it? I mean, placebo,
Correct. Yeah.
it's pretty hard not to know when you're on a psychedelic. So
Correct.
that's actually a really good question to ask,
If you
Peyton
are
or whoever, right?
I'm dropping it on the next CEO or whoever the next psychedelic thought leader is that we have on the podcast. I'm going to ask him because I'd love to know the answer.
That's a good question. And I also know too that if you looked at these results, the MDMA assisted therapy results, the placebo group actually had a pretty high remission rate as well. Like
I think it was
did well. And
35
it just
or
goes to show
35 or 37%.
We're getting some
something
good
like that. It
comments.
was double for MDMA assisted therapy with in that group with the MDMA. It was over double, but placebo was still very high. And I think the reason what it goes to show is that how important talk therapy is in the process. Now, when you combine talk therapy with the MDMA, it's got double the efficacy power plus. But it wasn't like nothing happened. Still, it's even talk therapy cured 35, 40. 35%.
Yeah, I saw that. It was 35. It was 35%, which is impressive.
Yeah. Lucifer writes, don't think it's about effects and more about the therapy results of PTSD quelling. And then Greg afterwards says it matters from psychotherapy side with placebo.
Yeah.
Which makes sense.
Yeah.
Mindset is a powerful thing, isn't it? So one of the things that we talked about with Cody was the fact that, what's next steps for MAPS? Are they going to go public? And if they do, he believes that this will be far and away the biggest IPO that this industry has ever experienced, which I can't help but agree, knowing that, as we've said before in previous podcasts, the amount of interest that Compass garnered last month with that share purchase agreement for a phase 3 that's beginning. And now not only we have a phase 3 completed, but the data that was generated from it is going to obviously garner a lot of attention from institutions. Do you guys not think? Ben, I'll start with you first.
I think yeah.
I don't know about that. And I only say that not because it isn't as big or a great company. MAPS is the GOAT in the industry, but because it was a different time when Atai got in, for example. I mean, I believe the IPO was priced at like what, $12 or $13 a share. So its valuation was close to
like $5 billion. Like no, it was like $5 a share.
Good weekend, really reals.
It was priced at like $12 or $13 a share.
That'd be 10x. Aren't they valued at like 300 million right now?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. So it'd be like
Atai's. Wait, no, that's not correct. Yeah, Atai's trading right now at a $240 million market cap at $1.45 a share. So yeah, let's say 13. They're trading at 8 times that, so close to $2 billion.
Call it 2.5.
MAPS ain't coming out at a $2 billion market cap. You're out of your mind.
No, the private share deal is implied valuation of 200 million, and that's more of a byproduct of how much the psychedelic sector has decreased over the past, year and a half. So, should it be as big? I mean, it should be. I mean, they have 2 completed phase 3s. They're going to have an NDA and new drug application. What, 6 to 8 weeks, maybe?
Hopefully.
I mean, it's going to be the first one to go. To be sensitized to the FDA process, but will it have the same valuation? It probably won't. Just for that reason.
I mean, MAPS. If I was one of the other companies, I'd be seething at what MAPS is doing right now. I mean, MAPS are going to basically prove the business model. They're gonna have to move fast and break things, and they're gonna have to figure it out on their own. And then when 003 for like Cybin comes through, and then if and when like DMT comes through for Cybin as well, and then psilocybin with Compass, I mean, they're going to have key learnings into the patient process, into the therapy process, into the rollout and commercialization that MAPS isn't going to have.
Good to see you, Mohammed. What was I got distracted there. I was looking at some notes, but what was the IPO valuation for Atai? Was it $2 billion?
Back of the napkin math is it was somewhere between 1.7 and 2 billion. 2 billion.
Anthony writes, does the price point for the MDMA treatment limit the market until insurance companies approve?
So insurance companies already have codes in the back end for MDMA assisted therapy. It's going to be analogous to what they're doing with ketamine right now, or that's what we've heard.
Yeah. 13 million Americans currently with PTSD is the stats number. And interesting news, too, that we had a lot of correlation with PTSD connected with addiction, where right now there's as many as 15 million people from severe alcohol use disorder in the U.S. But needless to say, there's going to be both inpatient and outpatient care, which I can definitely see from what we learned today. And it makes sense because, let's face it, rehabs, the relapse rate of the current medications and therapies, I think the failure rate's over 90%, which is crazy.
Yeah. I mean, but it makes sense. I mean, PTSD, people need coping mechanisms for PTSD, which usually are unfortunately drugs or alcohol use.
Yeah.
That's just as fucked up as it sounds, it's a natural fit.
Yeah.
Now it's worth noting that the newest study that just came out in MDMA assisted therapy, that they took substance use disorder in cannabis and alcoholic use. That was incorporated into the trial. So it wasn't like they weeded out people with other substance use disorders and didn't use them to make their, to juice up the trial numbers, to juice up the success rate. They didn't do that. So they did use those in those two substances. They did use patients in that trial. So I mean, these numbers look good, and they didn't seem to affect the overall numbers.
Yeah. Want to bring up that Anthony Coniglio, who's been writing a few comments here, he's the CEO of New Lake Capital Partners. We're actually going to start providing some coverage for this company, but I know you got a great piece coming out Monday, Ben. But if you can, just maybe a quick outline as to they trade currently on the OTC markets, and interesting company to say the least that we met in New York last month, Anthony. But maybe touch on maybe some of the article that you've outlined and some of the stuff that you learned this week about them.
Yeah, they're just, I create an article, again, look for it on Monday, sometime Monday morning or late morning, early afternoon. And basically they are a cannabis REIT. They focus on the cannabis industry. They have some of the top MSOs as part of their clients, which is always nice to have. That in theory should limit default risk because these clients are very capitalized. So they're paying their rents. They're paying their lease. So yeah, they count, Cresco, True Leave, Air Wellness, etc., as part of their client list. They do pay off a dividend, and that dividend has never declined in the history of them being a public company.
Which is notable.
And they have a three-prong revenue model. So it's a company that looks good, and they are profitable too. Net income profitable. And paying a dividend. So it's a company to look into if you're looking for, stable earner, and you're looking to add, a dividend to your portfolio. It's a company it's a name to check out.
So how does a company like that stem to benefit, if we get reform?
Increasing CapEx spending. I mean, companies are gonna have to expand. I mean, especially when you look at markets like Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Florida. In order to cater to those adult use markets and adult use conversions coming online in those markets, companies are going to have to spend in the CapEx department. Yeah.
We will have Anthony on Monday. That'll post on Tuesday. We're going to learn a lot about the industry and lots to talk about as, in addition to how things are moving, brick and mortar aspect and how that develops if we get reform. Going to be a lot of growth, I would think. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But listen, we're going on 50 minutes now. Just want to appreciate everybody that's logged on here today. Appreciate all the comments. Enjoy your weekend. Enjoy week 2 of the NFL football season. All in all, a great week to be had for both the cannabis and psychedelic industries. And more importantly, lots to look forward to heading in to next week. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and leave a comment below and let us know if there's anything you want to learn about, any thought leaders you want us to reach out. We will reach out to them and try to set up that interview. One thing to note too, actually, we're going to have the CEO of Air Wellness on next week as well. And the spaces with Don Murphy as we keep rolling with the biggest and best names in the industry. So gents, enjoy the weekend, and we'll see you guys Monday.
See you on Monday.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, everyone, for coming.
Take care.